The Australian Grand Prix is currently held at the Melbourne Grand Prix circuit, which is a street circuit that runs through the city's Albert Park. First introduced in 1996, the Albert Park circuit is also known for its unique location in the heart of Melbourne. This makes it a very popular destination for fans who also enjoy the carnival-like atmosphere that surrounds the event, featuring live music, food stalls, and other entertainment, which adds to the overall experience. The track spans around 3.3 miles long and is historically known as a single-laned racetrack with short, bumpy braking zones, making overtaking pretty difficult. After years of feedback regarding this single-lane racing line and highly limited passing opportunities, changes were made last year to promote better racing in widening turns 1, 3, 6, 11, and 13, and getting rid of the notorious turns 9 and 10 chicane. Also, alongside this, they widened pit lane and resurfaced the whole track. Some of the most successful drivers at the Australian Grand Prix include Michael Schumacher, who's won the race 4 times, and Lewis Hamilton, who's also won the race 4 times. The most successful team at the race would be Ferrari with 9 overall wins, and Charles Leclerc being the most recent winner in 2022. Overall, the Albert Park Grand Prix circuit is a challenging racetrack, and with new additions in recent years, we can hope for an exciting finish in the land down under. Hey guys, hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're having an awesome weekend. For me, I'm on spring break, so I've been relaxing and resting this weekend, and I've been anticipating tonight because I am super excited for Australia. This is going to be a pretty late race for me. It's going to be around 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. Is how long the race is probably going to last. I know some of you in Europe and other countries may have even earlier times for the race start, but you can see I do have my coffee here because I need to get caffeinated, man. I need to be energized come race time. However, let's talk about Australia. As I mentioned in the beginning intro part of the video, there are some teams that are notoriously good here. Mercedes and Ferrari have a lot of data. They're really strong here typically. Red Bull doesn't notoriously do well here. Last year, they struggled. Max Verstappen had some tech issues, and he only has 1 pole to show here. Okay, does this mean he's going to do terribly? No. Okay, doesn't mean anything in that sense, but we'll talk about it. But I think we have to take history into account. However, take it with a grain of salt. There has been some additions and some subtractions, some changes made to this racetrack. It's not the same racetrack it has been in the past, okay? So a lot of that success that some of these teams have seen is not going to maybe square up with how the track is now, okay? And so we have to take that with a grain of salt. What I saw in practice, what I saw in qualifying, a lot of slipping, a lot of sliding. We could see in FP1, FP2, FP3, rain was a factor, and so I know that does come into play, okay? But a lot of guys in the gravel, a lot of guys struggling and spinning out, and so that definitely came into play. We had some GPS issues to start off, FP1, and then from there, things kind of got rolling. We had Prez in the gravel, gravel. Some of the notes I have here. Magnussen in the gravel a couple times. Yuki had a big slide. A lot of traffic issues because they couldn't communicate properly. And so that was obviously an issue. Of course, we need communication, especially when guys are slipping and sliding. And then communication is not good. That doesn't really make for great racing. When it came to FP2, Ferrari was looking pretty good. We had wetness in the mix again. Traffic complaints again. A lot of guys didn't know the others were on a fast lap, and so they get in their way, and it just completely ruins their time, which could be frustrating as a driver. You're like, hey, I'm trying to make a time for this lap, trying to get myself on the leaderboard, get people hyped up, and see where I square away, and then somebody kind of cuts you off. Probably really frustrating, right? Stroll hit the wall, got off track a couple times. Alonso had the fastest lap of the day, FP2. Ferrari looked good, as I mentioned. Haas, Alfa Romeo, running new power units this weekend, so that's something to keep in mind. No penalty there yet, but just something to keep in mind that they're trying to get something switched up there. FP3, Max really came up here, showing what he's capable of. Got fastest lap that day. Alonso coming in second. Ocon coming in third. Had his shoe stuck in his pedal, but otherwise looked very good. And then Russell fourth, Gasly fifth. And moisture causing some issues again. Magnussen in the gravel had a red flag due to Nick DeVries debris. That rhymed, man. That should be in a Dr. Seuss book. Nick DeVries debris. Make it happen. Otherwise, get to qualifications. Sargent spun it a little early, got a little bit further back than maybe he deserves. Perez was in the gravel. That was huge, right? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, Red Bull is going to take the whole season. There's no chance we're going to win a race. And then, you know, things happen, right? It's racing. It's what happens. So he got in the gravel. He's struggling with his brakes, and he's going to start last, which is crazy, right? And I think it'll be similar to what happened last weekend, or last race rather, with Max Verstappen, in that he's going to start further back, but I think he's still capable of finishing on podium. He's got a great ride. A couple guys that I marked down as surprising in kind of where they squared away on qualifying. And, you know, I'm going to throw it up here. I'm just going to go through it. Forgive me for the disorganization. You know, I appreciate your patience, as they say, right? But we could see that Max Verstappen proving the haters wrong. Still going to get first. He's like, yo, I'm back up top, man. Mercedes looked phenomenal. And Russell's still besting Hamilton. I feel like that's kind of like a talk right now on social media. Everybody's like, he's doing better than Hamilton. What the heck? Alonso and Stroll both look good. And I'm really excited to see Stroll. And I've said this, he's very underrated. I find that he had a trouble last race. And I'm really excited to see him compete because I haven't been able to see him do what I think he can do. So we'll see about that. As I mentioned, Ferrari's got a really strong history here, and they're not showing very well. I mean, they're typically, the meme is that they have a really good qualification setup, but then when it comes to race day, just throw it out the window. They don't know what they're doing. But then, like, they're starting 5th and 7th. Like, I feel like they should be, at least one of them should be, you know, on starting in the front row. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But distraction here. A couple guys I saw that did very well in practice, and I was kind of surprised where they ended up when it came to qualifying. I thought Bottas can be doing a little bit better. And then Sargent as well. You could see that Albon is in 8th, and then you see Sargent, and you're like, what are you doing all the way down to 18th? And I think that spin had the factor in that, but I could see him climbing a little bit. Also, Lando Norris showed some pace in practice. I could see him maybe breaking the top 10. Williams cars, as I mentioned, regarding Perez, I think he'll climb. And then the Alpine cars, we have them 11th and we have them 9th, but I think Gasly can maybe make some gains, maybe get a little bit higher up, and same for his partner. And so honestly, I'm trying to think here of what's going to be surprising me tomorrow. I guess it's tomorrow for me, but I don't know how much I'm going to be surprised. My prediction is this: I think that Verstappen is gonna get first place. Pretty cliche there. I think Perez is going to make his way up to 4th place. I think that Hamilton is going to have some issues, and I think Russell will end up finishing 2nd. And 3rd place, I think, will be, let's say, Fernando Alonso. That's my prediction for the race come tonight. I'm super excited, and let's break into the race. Next, I want to have a segment we're just going to call like a meme review kind of a segment here, in which I'm going to just put up F1 memes that I found throughout the week. And this is a time where if you guys want to message me and shoot me some messages on Instagram, you find some funny memes, you may find them in here. And so last video, I told you, hey, send me some memes. And so firstly, here's my Instagram. Give it a follow, and my Twitter as well. And so somebody by the name of Ahan sent me a video basically saying this is the stereotype of if you're this type of a Ferrari fan or McLaren fan or Mercedes fan, etc. To give like a stereotype. And basically a stereotype for me was that I'm old or I'm a teenager if I like McLaren, and that I'm never really gonna see them win. And you know what? He was bantering me a little bit. He's like, are you still sure you want to pick McLaren? Do you have any regrets? And I'm like, you know what? I like the underdog. Okay, I'm chilling with that. Okay, but honestly, with their firing of some of their staff members, I think that they're going to be so much better this weekend. They're going to win the race. It's going to change everything. I'll put the poll up here. I agree with the people that said no. I don't think it's going to change much. Anyways, follow me on Instagram. Next meme I found, I believe the individual is Ahmed. He did not send this to me, but I found it on Twitter. Basically, Carlos Sainz had this huge theory of caffeine and sleep and trying to not be jet lagged. And really, you have to think about, they're really changing time zones quite a bit and how much they travel. And high-level athletes, right? They have to perform at a very high level. And so the jet lag could be a real big factor. And so, I don't blame Carlos for having this crazy theory of like not sleeping till this hour. And he's trying to explain it to everybody on Twitter. I found it pretty hilarious. So I decided to put that in there. And props to the drivers for putting up with that. And then lastly, I'll put up here, we have this classic Daniel Ricciardo meme. I'm finding a lot of Daniel Ricciardo memes because he's kind of just there, like he's a part of this team that's like uber successful, but he doesn't like drive. Like he's a driver, he's just like stuck there for a year. And so it's like, I just find it comical. There's a lot of memes that come out anyway that are funny with him, but this one I found funny. That was more recent. The Red Bull mechanic forgot to hook up Sergio's brake. I'm Daniel Ricciardo, and I'm a car mechanic. In other words, Daniel Ricciardo like sabotaging Sergio Perez, so he can drive eventually. And so I found that funny. But if you guys have any memes you find this next week, shoot me a message on Instagram. Maybe you'll see it in the next meme review segment, and I'm gonna come up with a better name. If you think of a better name, let me know. Okay, but now we're gonna officially get to me watching the race. Let's get to it.
My wife was sleeping during the race and couldn't film, so now we're gonna go to my thoughts on the race. Okay, bye.
So the start of the race. This week, we didn't have any grid penalties, and part of that might have been because they did widen the boxes to start. And so in prior weeks, we saw Alonso and Ocon get some penalties on that. And so it's kind of relieving to not have to deal with that controversy in the beginning of the race. But wait, there was still a controversy. Maybe not controversy, but we'll get to that here in a second. But the start of the race was pretty clean. However, I do have something to mention. In F1, I wish that the person who's on pole got to choose whether they started on the left or the right side or the inside or the outside lane or have some preferred line, whatever they want to choose. They're the pole sitter, right? But no, Max Verstappen had the outside in turn 1, and I felt like George Russell really got from the inside of him. And I don't think it's necessarily because he had a better start. I just think he had quite a better position on that first corner. And so we did see George Russell pass Max Verstappen early on, and then everybody else kind of made their way through, which was awesome. And then because that for turn 1 can be flipping crazy, as we'll come to find out later. But then right after they get out of turn 1, Max Verstappen had trouble kind of accelerating there, and then another car even passed him up, and so then he was down 2 positions and in 3rd place early on. And then right after that, we have that second gravel pit, and that's where Leclerc kind of spun out into the pit. And so this isn't surprising to me at all based on me watching practice and qualifying. Gravel. I mentioned it earlier, okay? It was going to be a factor in this race, and it will come to continue to be a factor. And so it wasn't surprising that somebody spun. It was just surprising to me that it happened to be a Ferrari car. They know they're good here, and they've had good history here. And though they don't have the greatest car this year, I thought that they'd maybe be a little bit more careful. And so I was not necessarily anticipating Leclerc spinning out that early. And so we had a really early yellow safety car, and that really initiated some pit sequencing things, and we'll talk about that here come the next yellow and red that come up. But next, let's get into the next topic. All right, so in lap 9, Alex Albon did end up spinning out into the gravel, so similar to how Leclerc spun into the gravel, and instead of forcing a yellow, it actually forced a red flag. And so this immediately changed tire strategy. A lot of people diving into the pits. Notably, McLaren and Aston did not pit. But this is only lap 9 of a 58-lap race. And so in the first 9 laps of the race, we had a yellow and a red flag. And so for me, at 12 o'clock at night, 12:30 at night, I was like, man, dude, I just wanted it to be kind of a quick race. But I think this really sets up the future. Okay, but Alex Albon having a tough break. It seemed like he had a good ride this week especially, and kind of bouncing off the past couple weeks. So that was kind of a shame to see him out so early. Then not even 10 laps later, we got on lap 18. We've got one of our front runners of this race, somebody who qualified in the starting 3 spots here, George Russell, having issues with his car, having mechanical issues. We got the back of his car, big fireball here. And so back of his car kind of went poof, and then we have another safety car. So within the first 18 laps, we have 3 race quote-unquote stoppages. And so, again, kind of mix things up here. But a lot of people opting to go to that harder tire early on, kind of switching out, and this may come into play a little bit later. And so after the dust settled from the first couple yellows and the red flags flying everywhere, we were able to see where all these drivers kind of fell into place. And so after all this shenanigans in the beginning of the race, we were able to really identify some of the redeeming qualities that Australia has. And so those changes they made, as I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, with resurfacing, with adding a DRS zone, with taking away the turns 9 and 10 chicane, with widening parts of the track, this allowed for a very free-flowing race in which cars were able to kind of draft off of one another and utilize these DRS zones to make passage and really engage and compete with one another. We saw a lot of back and forth with a couple drivers in the middle of the pack especially, and we saw some new names. We saw McLaren, we saw Alpine, we saw Haas really making their presence known in the middle to the front of the pack, especially for drivers like Gasly and drivers like Magnussen, finding their way to the front of the pack, not the front, but towards the front. And of course, things happen, but we'll talk about that. Rest in peace, right? But it was really refreshing to see these new names in the mix. And me being a first-time Australia race viewer, I found that to be refreshing to see those new names in there. Also, I found that the track didn't seem all that wide. I mean, for me, just being a first-time viewer, I'm like, okay, they widened it. Why does it still seem a little bit narrow? And Noah had to remind me that these cars are just really big, and we'll see this in later races. Yay, right? These cars are just way bigger than they have been in the past. And so next we see 4 laps left to go in the race. It's all but over. I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty happy with where guys are at. It seemed like a pretty good race. The front end of the race was really exciting. A lot of things going on. Some surprises, especially with Leclerc being taken out. I was content with where we were at, okay? And then all of a sudden, Magnussen hits the wall. And so his tire kind of goes flying, and debris flies all over the track. Apparently, I mean, I didn't really get to see a great view of it. They never really showed it that much. But anyways, this kind of brought some controversy along with it. So originally, they're like, yeah, yellow flag. And you really assumed this race would likely finish under yellow. And I was fine with that, right? But then after a couple laps, they decided, you know, let's red flag the race. And so for me, immediately when I saw this, I was like, this is like a really NASCAR thing to do. Like, hey, let's red flag the race and try to make some grand finale, 1-lap shootout kind of bullcrap. And I'm not really here for that. And we'll talk about my opinion in a second. But a lot of drivers are on the same page. They're like, what? There's not even that much debris. What's going on, right? And so I feel like F1 kind of, the FIA kind of put the entertainment before like just being true to the sport of racing. It's not, there's no overtime garbage. I mean, we saw how this was an impact in Austin with the NASCARs last week or the week before that, and how they had like they needed 4 tries to finish the stinking race, and they kept adding laps on. That's garbage. And then we saw the whole complete other side of the spectrum with IndyCar, and I watched the amazing IndyCar race at Texas Motor Speedway. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, flip and watch that race. It was phenomenal. But what we saw in that race is the race finished under yellow. There was one of the last couple laps, Grosjean got into the wall. You guys probably know Grosjean, right? Got into the wall, not surprisingly, but that caused a yellow, and they finished the race under yellow. And the people that won were probably the people that were supposed to win. And Joseph Newgarden won. He was ahead all day, pretty much, right? And so I think Formula 1 just needs to stay consistent. I've seen that happen with a lot of other things that Formula 1's enforcing. It's just not really all that consistent, okay? But now that my opinion's kind of out of the way, let's talk about what actually happened now, okay? So they red flagged the race. We're kind of just waiting around for like 20 or so minutes. I do like how F1 tells you this is when the race is going to restart. So with IndyCar and other race series, I feel like they don't tell you. You have no idea, how long am I going to be waiting here? It's going to be 45 minutes. It's going to be an hour. What's going on? And it's been like that before, trust me. But I was happy that they're like, hey, it's starting at this time. And I think it was like 25, 30 minutes. It was a little long, but whatever. And so we got a pretty crazy start, right? All these cars are ready to go, and there's people that are really desperate. They are getting an opportunity to get behind Verstappen and some of these leaders who have been ahead pretty much all day, right? And so they get an opportunity to shoot at him. And so some people are desperate, and they're going to make some crazy, crazy moves. But what are your thoughts? Do you think there was a legitimate amount of debris to put the red flag out? This is what my fans thought on Instagram, but you let me know what you think in the comments. Now let's get into the complete and utter chaos that ensued on the restart. And they're coming around the corner. It's going to be an exciting finish. This is going to be the best in history. There's 2 laps left. It's going to be a shootout. What's going to happen? Right. Craziness, right? Okay. And so they flipping do a stop start, and they go, and right away there's cars spinning, flying everywhere. Okay, the first person I see Sainz spin Alonso. I'm like, bro, that's my guy Alonso, what are you doing, right? And that causes everybody else to kind of check up and have a bunch of issues. And so then we see Perez and Gasly lock up, get into the grass. We see Sargent get into the back of De Vries, and then that's just like a bunch of cars just got obliterated right there, and we're not even through the first turn. And then we get through the first turn, and then my boy Gasly, who's been doing well all day, man, the Alpine cars look so good, he gets into his own teammate, man. It's so unfortunate. Didn't see him coming, and then they take each other out on the last lap, last part of the race. And so that was frustrating. This is all like in the first turn there. And so there's just like so much craziness going on. Again, gravel. This is something that, you know, is going to be a trend here. We're not done yet. So we get through the turn 1, and then we work our way over to the second gravel pit. And don't forget, this is gravel, baby. And so Stroll gets himself spun into the gravel as well. My boy Stroll, I just want to see you finish the race, homie. I want to see you compete like I know you can, man. And so, yeah, he apparently said he had cold tires, which I can admit that that's probably the case because they didn't give him that many laps to go around the track. But spun into the next gravel pit. And so for me, and this after this happened, they had to finish the race under yellow anyway. So it's like, this was just a disappointing finish. It was kind of like we hyped it up to be something super crazy cool, and they put us in this position for it to be super crazy cool. And I'm like, I wasn't okay with that to begin with. And then they do it, and it's just like it made it worse than it would have been if you just let the race finish the way it would have finished anyway. Just have it finish under yellow anyway. So they claimed there was wheel rim debris, apparently. But apparently we can't drive around that. I don't know. Whatever. But, you know, it's just, there was a lot of just complete chaos. It's just complete, total, utter chaos. And that's what I'm going to call it. Total chaos is what the announcer called it. And so, what the heck's the procedure? We red flagged the race with 1 lap to go. Everybody's talking about all these sectors. I have no flipping idea what that means. Okay, there's a similar terminology in IndyCar and how we can utilize these imaginary lines to determine what, if there's a wreck, where people would be placed. Okay, and I'm familiar with that. And so they kind of, I looked up some of what the sectors mean and all this, and I'm like, okay, and that makes sense. And so they kind of, what the race order was after all that wreckage was not accurate at all, because they didn't really take into account some of those passes that happened. And so some people got bumped down. Also, some people that were in wrecks didn't get accounted for because they didn't get through that first segment. It's just craziness, okay? But a lot of people are confused what the heck's going on, okay? And a lot of teams too. And so you even see Haas upset, and they're appealing the race finish and the race results. And then we also see Sainz gets a 5-second penalty for spinning out Alonso, okay, which I'm okay, deserved. But then why isn't Sargent getting a penalty for completely obliterating the behind of De Vries, right? So what is the consistency? Why is there a discrepancy there? It's frustrating, Formula One. It's frustrating. FIA, I should say. But that's a race. That's Australia. And so we'll keep moving forward here. I thought it was an entertaining race, a little bit of a late race, but ultimately it mixed things up a little bit. And let's get into the results. So I'll put the results up on the screen. You see, firstly, we have Max Verstappen finishing the race up on top. And so he drove a pretty clean race, had a little bit of a moment, I would say, towards the end of the race, spinning out on the grass last few laps of the race. But besides that, it was a pretty clean drive. Lost it on the start, but he got his positions back. Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes looked really good, really good. Surprisingly, I thought Ferrari was going to do better than them kind of going into the weekend, but Lewis Hamilton's sticking, which is good drive by him. Fernando Alonso, I thought Aston Martin's looked good as well. And Fernando Alonso being really consistent with that third place, man. I hope he can get it a little bit higher up later on. And so Lance Stroll sticks that fourth place spot, even though he spun in that second gravel pit. And so, kind of a lucky break on him with the ruling of the sectors. And so, nice to see him get a decent finish. Sergio Perez working his way up from last place, 20th to 5th. He is the driver of the race, la la la. I mean, personally, it's not like he did anything like super spectacular. I mean, he has one of the best cars, the second best car in the field. And so he did what he was supposed to do. I thought he maybe should have gotten a little higher up. He seemed a little stagnant at some points in the race. Stuck behind guys. But he still took 15 positions, which is good on him. But I would have been more inclined to give somebody else the driver of the race. I don't know who, but not him. You know what? It is what it is. Lando Norris getting 6th place. Good on him. And I thought him and Piastri did very well today, both. Getting the 6th and the 8th for McLaren. That's a good start, man. Hopefully we can get that more consistently. We've got Hülkenberg, and he's kind of sticking in there in 7th place. And I thought Haas showed pretty well in the middle of the field this week, and it was nice to see them up there. And then we've got Zhou in 9th, Yuki in 10th. We've got Bottas in 11th. I honestly, towards the end of the race, I was like, you know what, man? Bottas is having a terrible day. He was, in last place. And then we had all these DNFs, and he finally got up a little bit, in his hometown kid. Carlos Sainz, unfortunate. He had a good ride. I thought, again, I mentioned this again, but Ferrari didn't really have it this week. I thought they were going to be better, but I finished 12th. Gasly and Ocon, unfortunately, taking themselves out of where they were. They were much higher up. They probably would have been in the top 10 for sure if they didn't take each other out. Then we have Nick and Logan, who also took themselves out, finishing 15th and 16th. And then the rest of the guys technically got the DNFs. We've got Magnussen, George Russell, Albon, and Leclerc. But really, you could say there were much more DNFs because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these cars wrecked. So, 12 out of the 20 cars, actually were intact at the end of the race. So, maybe not the results that we wanted. A little sloppy, to be honest with you. A lot of driver error, and the series kind of set them up for it. But thanks for tuning in for another great week. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys thought of the race. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week.